morning, everybody. So, a warmly welcome from our side to our talk, How Technology-Driven B2B Disruption Works. So, first of all, a little commercial break. Who are we? We are from Turbine Kreuzberg. We are an e-commerce agency, and we're doing a lot of projects within the B2B environment, and we have offices in Berlin, Leipzig, Stuttgart, and Faro. And why are we talking about B2B disruption? As our customers more and more are changing and getting more and more in the B2B environment, we want to talk about this topic today. But who are we? My name is Daniel. I'm one of the CEOs of Turbine Kreuzberg, and I'm here with my colleague.
Hi, I'm Thomas. I'm a technical director at Turbine Kreuzberg, and today I will be the nerdy sidekick.
Yeah, so for Turbine Kreuzberg, it is good that I am not developing. So my perspective is more from the business point of view. So I will tell you within the next minutes the business side, why technology, why B2B disruption, why we talk about this today, and Thomas later will go on with the technical perspective. So if we talk about technology and disruption and B2B, there are a lot of buzzwords. So you hear a lot of blockchain, you hear a lot of industry or Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, but also B2B commerce. But when we talk about technology or disruption in a B2B environment, we also have to think about from where are we coming. And if you think about B2B, it's often about digitized effects. So we are not talking about fancy features or whatever. We are talking about that B2B customers are used to place their orders with effects. Why? Because it's the most easiest way for them. So they have a piece of paper. Sometimes they only write the SKU or whatever on the paper, and they send it to their supplier, and then the supplier calls him or whatever does if something is not clear. So this is really important, because if you want to disrupt or if you want to implement a digital sales channel in B2B environment, you often make the mistake that you think, yeah, well, it's an online shop. But an online shop is for a person who is ordering via fax not really comfortable. So it's really, for him, it's uncomfortable because he has to log in. Often he forgets his login data and all that stuff. He has to go to his computer. And with the fax, he just goes to his working place, writes down what he needs, and then he sends it to the supplier and he gets the product. And so another thing I want to talk about is that we also have to digitize the sales rep. Because in B2B environment, it is often common sense that a sales rep is visiting the customer's place weekly, monthly, whatever, and he asks his customer, what do you need from me? Or if you buy product A, please think about buying product B. And this is also pretty comfortable for the buyer, because he knows, well, there's a person coming to my place. I do not have to take care of my stock and all that stuff, because somebody from my supplier is taking care of all of these processes. And then you, as a B2B company, want to digitize, and then you have to think about what should I do and what can I do to get him away or to make it more easier, more comfortable than calling his sales rep or use the fax. So, but why are using the customers often fax or using the sales rep or whatever? Because in the B2B environment, it is often, we are not talking about shirts or shoes or whatever. We are talking about products with sometimes really highly complex technical details. So the customer often does not know which product he has to buy for his use case. So if you think about the screw business, he does not know whether he needs screw A or screw B, or which screw he is forced to use because of some legal definitions or whatever. So with an online shop, you cannot give him the security that in the point when he places the order, he got the right product. So a sales rep is going to the customer's place, is talking to him, is knowing his problems, is knowing his use cases, and with all this knowledge, he can say, or he can tell him what he has to buy. But with an online shop or with a digital sales channel, there is a lot of hurdles to really make sure that when he clicks in the checkout process, he clicks buy, that he then knows that he buys the right product. And this is often what we are facing in customers' project, that they are only thinking about a digital sales channel like an online shop, but they have no answer how to make the customer confident that in the point or in the moment he pressed the buy button, that he gets the right product. And so this is for him, really, for the customer, it's not often good to have an online shop, or he does not want his supplier to use to have an online shop. So he only wants to buy his products in the most comfortable way, in the easiest way. And in the moment when he places his order, then he doesn't want to have to do anything with his order afterwards. So he does not want to have to go to online shop, log in, look after his order, or look where his parcel is at the moment. So he just wants to order the product and then gets away. And then he knows, okay, the next day I receive the product or somebody is bringing it to me. So in B2B environment, there's a lot of logistics and a lot of services you have to bring in within your digital sales channel, that your customers are really accepting this channel and are not tending to call the sales rep anymore. So also the role of the sales rep is changing within the next year. So the sales rep is not only selling anymore, he's also telling the customers how to use the products and how to use it in a more efficient way. So he gets more and more another role within the future. But to make sure that he can do this, you also have to make sure that your digital sales channel has to be in a way that the customer doesn't need some help within the order process. Because if he buys the product A, but he needs the product D, and then he cannot finish his construction site or whatever, it's pretty uncool for the customers, and he gets delayed, and then sometimes he has to pay fees and all that stuff. And so when we talk about disruption in the B2B industry, we have to think about this environment, and we have to think about how we can do within the digital sales channel, or what we can do within the digital sales channel to make sure that the security in the buying process is pretty clear and for the customer it's really convenient. So this is the customer side, that what does the customer want to have? But also, if we think about the companies, the suppliers, the manufacturers and all that stuff, you often hear the word VUCA. So because sometimes they have a pretty old ERP system, they are not really able or have knowledge how to handle digital processes. Sometimes they not have the product data in a digital form. So they have 10 product developers, and each product developer makes his documentation in a separate way. The first one uses an Excel sheet, the second one uses an PDF or Word document, the third one uses a PowerPoint. So the data is the first problem they have. And then without the data, they cannot do anything more without a lot of effort on the side. But what does VUCA mean? So the companies, if they are traders or whatever, they do not know where they will be in 5 years. They do not know whether the business model in 5 years is the same than today. So there's a lot of volatility. The business models, the way how to sell, how to trade is changing faster and faster and faster than 10 or 20 years ago. The second thing is uncertainty. If you decide today to go within to go with the digitization, and you just implement a sales channel, you do not know whether it's the right way. You do not know whether your decision for a shop system or for whatever is the right thing. So the uncertainty is another big problem of the companies. And the third is complexity. The things are getting more and more complex. So there is not the easy one way. If you go this way, it's sure that you will be successful. So the problem is that if you have several IT systems, really sometimes not the best IT infrastructure, and implementing a digital sales channel to really make sure that you go within the digitization is not easy, because it's a really complex problem. And the third thing is the ambiguity. So it's not the best, there's no best case scenario. There is no way who is making sure, yeah, well, if you do it this way, you will be really able to handle the digitization. There is only a separate case for each of our customers, or within the B2B industry. You cannot say, well, I do it like A, then I will be also able to handle all that stuff. So this is the business perspective from my side. So, but with all I told you now, then we are talking about the technology side. Now I will hand over to Thomas, because from our point of view, you really need innovative system solutions to use all these technologies.
Hi. How many developers do we have here in this room? Any? That's great. Cool. Let's start with this. When we talk about disruption in B2B, it doesn't have a huge impact on how we deal with software projects, how we manage these projects. So instead of talking about this, I chose to talk about blurry sewing machines. This is me. Sometimes I sew. And this is me and my beloved Pfaff 1222. We're both from the 80s. We share something, and sometimes we like to spend time together. And if you, like me, are from Berlin, there's kind of a competition going on between parents if you have kids. So if you go pick up your kid from kindergarten and you overhear somebody talking, or you talk to somebody, it's like, wow, these are some really nice pants your kid has. And you go, of course, I made them myself. It's not that you just buy things. No, you have to make them yourself. This is odd. I'm not that kind of person. I usually do things around the house, fix some drapes and patch pants if they are worn out. But a sewing machine is a really nice piece of mechanical engineering. I know that because I was looking for a machine for this old one, and I found it cheap here in Berlin, so I went to this guy to pick it up and found it was not in the condition he advertised it at. So I got it anyways. After bargaining a bit, I got it for really cheap, and then I went on eBay and bought another 2 machines that were broken to harvest some spare parts. And then I tore everything apart. I replaced the broken pieces. I cleaned it up, I greased everything, and I put it back together. And it's surprisingly, even though I did that, it's still working quite well. You can configure this machine. You can configure the type of stitching. You can configure the length of the stitch. You can even configure to do some very fancy stitching, and it can go in reverse and stuff like this. But it cannot do what this machine can do. It's also a sewing machine, but it uses 5 reels of thread. It has a couple of needles. It will also cut your fabric while you're combining multiple layers of fabric. But you cannot make this machine not cut the fabric, so it cannot do what my machine can do. I tried to make my machine do what this other can. Well, it didn't work out great. It was just ugly, and it didn't work. So why am I telling you something about sewing machines if you came here to hear something about B2B market disruption? When I sometimes sit there and do these things, I start to think, and I sometimes draw conclusions, and it occurred to me that a sewing machine works very well in the use case it was designed for. And it cannot work outside these use cases. There are some accessories you can buy from the manufacturer, like a table you can stick onto this thing, but even that, it will not extend, and it will not become this fancy machine. And we have the same thing when we talk about configurable software products. These products are made for covering specific use cases. And if you want to bend them to work outside these use cases, it becomes uncomfortable. It becomes unnecessarily hard to extend this, and it becomes unnecessarily hard to tweak the use cases. And since we want to disrupt these common use cases that most of the software is providing, it's not disruptive at all, because everybody has access to these use cases now. You just need to buy these products. So what we actually want to have is something like this. We want to have Lego Mindstorms, because it's just fun. No, but here you get building blocks. You get sensors, you get actuators, you get cogs, you get blocks where you can combine things. And you can decide if you want to use a cog to just look pretty on your device, or you can use it to build a gearbox and hook it up to an engine and make it do something. And this is what we actually need in software development. We need a toolbox, or we need to pick the right tool to support the disruptive use cases that our clients request. This comes, of course, with a drawback. The initial overhead that you have to implement the standard use cases is a bit more because you have to wire everything up. And this means slower time to market. But this is something that is okay for clients because you gain a lot. You gain a lot of flexibility, you have great extensibility, and you only wire up the things that you actually want to support. So overall, your system becomes less complex and thus easier to maintain in the long run. We at Turbine Kreuzberg, we currently use this. It's a bit biased. I used to work for this company, so take this with a grain of salt. But it turned out to be a great fit. I saw it from the other side, from the Spryker perspective, when requests from clients came in and everybody was like, whoa, we have to do this now, and why are they having these use cases? We're now on the other side of the table, and I have complaints now about Spryker, but overall, it's still a great solution for our projects that we have. To highlight this a bit more, I wanted to show you some insights from one of the projects we're doing. I will call it the 500 million products project. As you can probably already guess from the name, this project has a very large product catalog. It's really 500 million products. On top of that, it's kind of a marketplace. So you have vendor products on top of these products. So you can probably multiply this by 2. And if you're not familiar with the Spryker architecture from a very high-level perspective, it looks like this. You have a Z backend application that houses all the business logic. It's connected to a relational database, which by default is Postgres. And then you have Eves. It's the front-end application. It's entirely decoupled from this backend application for various reasons. It uses 2 storages to access product information. One is a search engine, which is Elasticsearch by default, and a key value storage, which is Redis. And you can think of these 2 storages in the front end as like a projection like you would do in event sourcing. So the backend application takes a snapshot of the application state and moves it to the front end storage. And the front end storage can be independently deployed and it can scale independently. So one node can handle a lot of requests because of this missing access to the relational database. The problem with this is if you have a very large product catalog, you have product information in multiple places. And with our client, the problem was also that they work across the globe. They have people working in every continent of the world. So you need to provide fast access to this data. That means you need to distribute the data across the globe. And then, if you have that, you need to synchronize that data. And that's a lot of complexity, and that's tough to do. So what we are trying to do is limit the amount of duplication that we have, which will also limit the synchronization that has to happen. So our first approach was to bypass this Redis. The usual flow in Spryker is that the client has some sort of PIM, and this PIM is able to spit out product information, and you will consume that from the Z instance, take that snapshot, and move it to the Eves instances. And the first step we were thinking about is getting rid of this Redis, or replacing at least the product data in Redis and just using information from Elasticsearch. And it turned out to be really easy because you can use Elasticsearch as a key value store as well, and it performs quite well. So we built a prototype, 1 person, 1 day, and it was working, at least for the most use cases. But then we spent another half week to actually make the final implementation. This was mostly our fault because, unfortunately, we transitioned some of the assumptions about the data structure into our implementation. So we didn't have proper data mapping. Now we do. So this is mainly our fault. But it was still quite easy to do and fast. And this was a requirement that came quite late in the project, or that we made the decision to do that. Now our second thing was to bypass the relational database. So since we have some developers here, who of you tried to do that? Getting rid of product data. So one, very good. Another one. How long did it take? Quite a while? Okay. Okay. To give you some background about the project, since we had this information now in Elasticsearch, we were thinking about, well, we don't need that moving around of data to the relational database, because for processing a sales order, we only need a minimum of this information. So that's why we sat down and drafted a contract between the PIM and the e-commerce shop about product data in Elasticsearch. And the PIM would then directly push information to Elasticsearch, and the Eves instance would use this Elasticsearch as a single source of truth for product information. And while we were sitting there, we were also drafting a contract how the PIM would structure information for importing into this relational database. And then we found, well, these contracts look surprisingly similar. In fact, they are identical, because it would make things easier for the PIM to export. They would not need to aggregate information for two different outlets. They would just use one contract. And then somebody had the stupid idea of, if you have this already in Elasticsearch, why do you need the relational database at all? We can skip the entire import process. So we gave it a shot. 2 days, 2 engineers, and we got a working prototype. And this working prototype covered pretty much 95% of all our use cases that we implemented for the project. The remaining 5 were probably just something that there was a disruptive part. So that was not one of the common use cases that were provided by the framework. And then it took us another 1.5 weeks for 2 engineers to actually make that change. I didn't believe that. I mean, it was really working. And then in the end, we were removing the database tables, and it was still working amazingly well. So this was a requirement that came in quite late. This idea came quite late in the project. We probably had already put something like 5 man-years into the project when we made this decision. And it just worked. And just because we picked the right tool in the beginning, lucky us, it was possible to do this. And now we have one single source of truth for product information for this e-commerce store. We don't have issues with synchronizing multiple storages. Now we can focus on one storage that needs to be distributed across the globe for quick access. But that's something that is solvable somehow. So with that, I would thank you.
So now I want to step in once more. Everything's good.
Okay.
So, while we are talking in the business point of view and the technical point of view, so if we customers, the digitization projects, they are often triggered by the salespeople or by the marketing people. So they say, well, okay, we do not, now we have to do something because digitization is not going over within the next 2 years. It's getting really more and more developed, and if we do not act today, we will be far behind, and perhaps we are not existing anymore in 2 or 3 years. So, but what you heard from Thomas is that when we are having the first customer talks, often there are only sitting marketing or salespeople, but they often only think, well, okay, we need a shop. But a shop is not the solution for getting through digitization and for really do sustainable development within your company. Because if we talk, I am as a business person to a marketing guy, he understands everything, yeah, but he does not understand what perhaps this means for his complete IT developed department within the company. So often they do not have own developers within the company. They just have one system, sysad, who is just dealing with all the problems. I forgot my login, or how can I switch on my wireless feature and all that stuff. So what we are seeing that the companies more and more have to develop within the technical perspective. So they have to be more or less a tech company. Not that they have to build up development departments with 50 or 60 people, but they have to have a person who understands all the technical requirements and all the technical thinkings about how to make sure that with the solution of today, we do not have to switch the system within the next 2 or 3 years. And this is, I think, what Thomas also explained, that with another system, or correct me if I'm wrong, with another system it wouldn't be that easy to handle all that stuff within this time, or?
There's probably other tools that do this as well, but with the basic tools that you just configure and that support easy and fast time to market, you're just covering what everybody covers, so you're not disruptive at all. And you need something that is flexible enough and clean enough, modularized enough, so you can mix and match whatever you want. But you need to focus on the technical side, of course. You have to have somebody that wires these things up. It's the actual implementation. It's not somebody configuring something somewhere. So there's the difference, yeah.
So in the first step, digitize your current business model is of course the right way. Please don't get me wrong. But if you think about all the wholesalers and traders, I think for the future, it's not really a functional business model if you just buy goods and sell it with X percentage more expensive to the customers. So these types of business models, they are really getting out of date or somehow. So in the first step, to just digitize your current business model is of course the right thing, but being disruptive in terms of technology and business model means that you have find a way and a solution to make sure that not by changing some kind of your business model that you need some more processes or processes you even didn't thought about it in the past within your online or shop system. And if this is not possible with a monolith or whatever, then you're more or less pretty have a problem after 1 year implementing a shop system, and then you know, okay, well, now I have a change or whatever, and I have to really invest a lot of time to get this feature within my shop. And as we all know, nowadays it's not a thing about money or whatever. The time is the most critical thing for all these companies, because nobody is sleeping at the moment. Nobody is saying, well, I do not have to digitize because I will sell my goods in 10 years. Comparing to today, there is no change. So everybody do something, and so the time is really the critical mass, and therefore you also have to be disruptive in a technology perspective and from the technology point of view. And with this, I just want to open the question round from your side. So if you have questions now, please raise your hand or stand up or whatever, and we are pleased to try to answer.
That is a very good question. And I'm very happy that the PIM team of the customer is dealing with this issue. In this case, we don't have very complex analysis on textual information because in B2B situations, you don't search for interest. You know what you're looking for. So the only thing that we analyze is manufacturer part numbers. So indexing is quite quick. For the full 500 million products, I honestly cannot tell you, but we expect around half a week at least. Yes. Don't be shy. No one. Good. Okay. Oh, there's a quite simple solution. We just store URLs to files with a product document in Elasticsearch. So these are distributed through a CDN somehow. But that again is a responsibility of the PIM. So we try to keep everything that doesn't belong in the e-commerce to the actual system that should have responsibility about this.
No more questions? Okay. Then we are a bit faster than expected. So we just want to thank you for your attendance, and we are around here, so if you have some questions you want to ask us within a more private conversation, feel free to come here. And once again, thank you. And so enjoy your meal, have a nice day, and enjoy your weekend after the code talks.